There, what's your levy limit? 400?
We even have 400, for the
He's
current year.
saying like,
He's
you might go over the levy limit.
You might go over the levy limit between mandatory health insurance costs and unemployment
And
costs.
here's a question for you, which would be kind of interesting, that follows that same line of thinking.
What's the break even?
No, what's
so to
the,
speak?
yeah, what's the average health insurance cost per school person?
I actually did that
Is it
calculation
like
and
10,000?
No,
No, it's not.
because it's
You're talking
60%.
average, usually.
Yeah, 60%.
I need to
60.
check that
Yeah,
figure. I did
because
it, but I
that-
don't remember
Because
it.
20 times that number is the number that's going to come off of our net school spending.
And that's part of that net
So,
school spending memo that I did.
It's
It is
going to
in
be a
that
little
memo.
circular.
Oh, I had that.
So for a while.
Yeah, it's going to
Yeah.
be circular.
Because then if we still have a deficit, then we're going to take the 300,000, divide that by
Yeah.
50 and lay off 6 more people.
Well, no,
We have another
the
$12,000.
unemployment doesn't
18,000.
go into our net school spending.
No.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking
Yeah.
about for the town side, you have a deficit in the town budget.
Yeah.
By laying people off, you create a deficit. When you create the deficit, then they're going to come back and divide that among all the departments.
Right.
And we're laying off 5 or 6 more people at 18 grand. We have another deficit. It just keeps going until
Yeah,
they
it doesn't
And
stop.
then, of
It's
course, the-
75,000 they have in the budget, or 100 grand, whatever they got.
And then the other potential, of course, is that your choice out, which is a town expense, would go up.
Yes.
So there's a lot of cascading scenarios here.
Right, yeah.
But
Yes, there are.
I think we've seen the worst case and what can cascade from that, the unemployment and the other issues. So, you've done a great job to this point, understanding the facts. Now you've got them, go push.
And I mean,
Thank you.
obviously.
Steve, you realize that's not a discussion. You realize that that's.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a slam your door in your face.
Yeah, we're playing.
I mean,
we would be
I can
going to
push
new
and I can
territory.
push, but
That's thank you, but we told you.
yeah,
this
we
is
already
the
told you
number.
this is the number.
No, but we do have
well,
some.
the FinCom hasn't
But that-
officially told us that's the number.
Well, the chair did.
Well, she said that she asked us to be
Oh, no, no,
prepared
no.
to discuss
No, no.
level funding.
Yeah,
She
that-
did.
yeah, that-
She
that
did.
was-
Ultimately, it's a
right.
vote by the board, as I understand it, so it's.
They what?
It's a vote by the board, I would
Yeah.
believe, right?
Mhm.
So
Correct.
there's a board decision.
Yeah.
There are other options, beyond that, which again, hopefully we don't get to, it goes to the board, hopefully we can find a solution. So I'm asking more, let's put the heads together and see if we can figure it out. I'm not anticipating a big hug fest and a very friendly conversation, but have the conversation. I'll be there right beside you, I'll be right in the middle on both sides. 'cause
We've
we
had a
gotta
couple
work
hug
for the
fests.
town, and we gotta do this.
Yeah, we're friendly.
Right.
We had like 2 or 3 hug fests. We had 15
Everybody
to
gets
30.
along. But
battles,
I have to also say to you that, this has a ripple effect in the district too. First of all, the timing is awful, but it has to be what it is. We've talked to all of the staffs to let them know, that these cuts were, I don't know if they've seen the cut list, but if they were individually affected, they received have a conversation with their principal supervisor. Otherwise, the staff has been made aware that, there are cuts in their building and maybe what those cuts are. I know I've provided Joe Patella with a copy of the list, but, it's just, it affects the morale. I mean, when we sat
Absolutely.
there on, what days did we do this? Tuesday and Wednesday to finalize it? I mean,
Yeah.
this is a very difficult task.
Carol, if it affects us the way it affects us,
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these
We're not
people, these
inside like
people
that,
here
so-
are a phenomenal group, and they have to sit there every single day and make it work. And, I think the level of professionalism and the difficulty and just discussing, taking a district perspective when we know how it impacts individual buildings. And then the teachers on top of that, we're getting results because we have phenomenal teachers, and they're saying, okay, you know what, we're gonna do what we have to do, but it's going to affect the morale. It's gonna be very
Absolutely.
difficult to
Oh,
get through the
absolutely.
year.
No doubt.
And I don't know what to say. I think as a group, all of us, and I imagine if we talk to people in town, people do not want to see the educational programs
but can I ask a
not
question
able to
for
be a
clarification?
qualification.
So if we follow Selectman Smith's thought process,
Yeah.
and we agree to move our maintenance dollars, because this is going to be a little bit of a shift, right? We're going to move maintenance dollars out into a town maintenance line item, whatever that looks like. Might be a separate department, might come under department, who knows? And that's going to reduce our current budget request, but then we're going to snap back to the number we have to spend anyway, right?
Correct.
So in effect, we're going to get that money regardless.
Correct.
And then if we need $200,000 to $300,000 over that, without, because we don't want, especially killing special education at this point and killing academic areas
High school.
at the high school, then if we were to, we know what a level funded budget looks like. If something happens on town meeting floor, we know what it looks like. But if we were to approve a different number, so if we approved a number of 11.9, I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but I'm just looking at something in the middle, not
Other than
knowing
what
what the
we
means.
have, right.
Right. So if we approve something higher, what does that mean?
Yeah.
If you do not pass an override to fund it,
No,
my
if we vote a number of
Right.
11,900,000
As a
coming from
committee, we say,
as a committee.
this
what
is our
state,
number.
what state law would say, okay, is that the school committee's budget is what goes on the warrant. Finance committee, the town manager, the selectmen can all argue against it, and it can be
And
cut.
would recommend it or not.
And would recommend it or not, but that would be the number, if you were to follow the state law, that would be put on the warrant.
Right.
What I guess, and maybe I'd ask for clarification of your question, George, is that what happens if it's on the warrant and passes, but there is no corresponding
Money to pay for
override?
it.
And my
Funding for
understanding
it.
of that situation is that essentially what would happen is the funding would go back to whatever fits within the levy limit, because there was no vote by the town to provide the increased funding.
But doesn't the budget that comes from the FinCon, that has to be a balanced budget, right?
Correct.
Okay, so if it's so how does our number, we would not be creating a balanced budget. We're not helping them create a balanced budget. We're
No.
creating an imbalance.
Well, then
So is that budget, is that article now subject to, well, it's subject to
Funding?
whatever funding resources, right, that
Right.
are available. And to the extent that such resources don't come through in an override, then does the entire budget take the hit for the town, or do just the schools take the hit?
That's something we'd have to research,
I would
because
research that.
Well,
different
I'm just
communities.
curious.
Drake, for example, when they proposed the school budget, it was actually a separate article. So there was really two distinct budgets, even though it was all in the same town meeting and it
Mhm.
all came together. So, for example,
That's how
their
we
issue.
normally do it.
Yeah, many communities do that. You do it a little differently here, where the school budget is integrated into the town budget.
Right.
Yes.
So it's a little different legislative process. So to be honest, I would have to do some research to see how that plays out in that situation. My gut reaction would be, actually, in thinking it through, which we've been talking about it, that the finance committee would still have to put a balanced budget
Right,
before.
exactly.
Right.
Steve, I just want to make sure I understand. So were you talking about, when you were talking about the centralized maintenance, were you talking about possibly getting an override for that amount, so that the rest of the, some of the money that's taken out of individual town departments that relates to maintenance would remain in the budget? I'm just trying to get a sense of what you're thinking about that.
I'm not sure the detail on that is
Okay.
there yet.
It's not
but
Because I think if you don't do it as an override, I'm not sure where you're gonna get the money,
There's not
so.
enough money now to maintain just not the school, the town.
The whole town,
Right.
There's
right,
not enough
that's
money
right,
right now, period.
Right.
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that.
right,
There has been discussions, there's been a lot of discussions, but one of the discussions was trying to centralize maintenance.
yeah,
There would, an override in essence probably would be required to fund that maintenance so that everything is done appropriately. It would affect all buildings, of which the schools would be part of that. And the current maintenance dollars allocated to each department or building, would be assessed as to contributing to that. So I would say there's a lot of detail to work behind.
sure,
But I think conceptually, I'm putting it out there as a school override versus a maintain the town's buildings override, as two very different audiences, two very different flavors.
absolutely.
Just a tad.
And it definitely will benefit the schools, but it will benefit
All
all,
towns.
the public safety building,
Right.
Yep.
has lots of issues that they need support with, town hall, all that. But, that's a good step, but my concern would be if it were only that, it doesn't help on the 34 cuts. So I think, 34 cuts and that is not a great solution. Some middle ground with the maintenance, again, not a great solution, but if that's the most workable, and, I'm kind of proposing it, I'm trying to find the right middle ground that serves the town as a whole, but also, preserves some of the fundamental classes in the school.
Well, one thing that doesn't make sense is to cut $800,000 and then go spend $360 on unemployment. You're spending almost $1 for every $2 you're cutting on unemployment, which has no educational value at all.
That's correct.
There's no benefit to the town at all.
the only thing, tougher than paying tax dollars is paying tax dollars that get wasted. And I don't mean that paying unemployment is a waste, but it
No,
doesn't,
no.
doesn't apply productively to the
Right,
school.
it's no
So let's
productivity.
make sure every tax dollar counts. And I think the big migration of the school over the decade is that we now know where every dollar's going. We know how the dollars count. Here, you have the list that says, here's the list. This is how your dollars count. This is what the meaning is. So let's take that list and understand the impacts and try and make every dollar count and squeeze every dollar we can. Which, by the way, FinCom and all the team are, trying to
Trying
make every
to do,
dollar count.
right.
No, they
absolutely.
absolutely are.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
They're in an untenable situation.
They're in a tough
Right.
spot.
They have a certain amount of money, and that's
They don't have a
They
magic
are
money
working
tree to
very
get money
hard.
from, yeah.
But I think, again, gotta go have the hard conversation again.
Okay,
Thank you. We are going to be discussing this again
March 3rd.
March
March
3rd in the same spot, so thank you to the few people from the public who attended tonight. Do you have any further questions before we move on?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to hear it. I really appreciate that everyone is here and it's after 9 o'clock and many of you are volunteering your time, and I think the town should appreciate that. Not only is the cutting of $865,000 not acceptable, and I am a parent of two. We've been in the town 7 years. I also work a ridiculous amount of hours trying to raise money to just bring in a few extra things to the school that isn't extra. It's just isn't covered on the budget. It's disgraceful to think that the town and the townspeople would abandon their responsibility. It's the town's responsibility to educate our children, to make sure that the roofs don't collapse on their heads, to educate them in a way that doesn't put them in a study hall twice a day. It's disgusting. And I understand how we've gotten here. I've certainly been involved with the schools enough over the last 4 years to understand exactly how we got here and why we got here. But I cannot sit by idly and try to be diplomatic about what's happening in this town. Our value of our homes is plummeting because people are not going to move here to move their kids into this kind of a situation. They're just not. People ask me every day, well, what should we do? The schools, we're having such trouble in schools. Shall we put our kids in private schools? My answer to that is, it's money. The answer is money. That's the bottom line. And 2.5% isn't cutting it. It's not making it. We're not making it. So the rubber has to hit the road here at some point in time, and people have to wake up and understand that this is a major league problem. And we're all going to have to work together to do something about it. And we're all going to have to communicate in a better way to the general public that it's unacceptable. It's just bottom line unacceptable.
We agree. I think it's unacceptable that there's no press here tonight.
Well, give Laura, make sure that she gets the DVD so she can watch it.
I honestly believe to just go right in the
Yeah.
print. I mean, I don't know why I wouldn't.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, the orange sheet, yeah.
Gloria, thank
I
you
agree.
so much for all you do.
Yeah,
And for
thank
being
you.
here at
Thank you for
9:30
all
at
you
night.
do.
We done?
We do appreciate it. All right, I think we're done with the budget discussion for tonight, but again, March 5th. Third, sorry.
March 3rd.
March 3rd.
Same
March
place,
5th is the community meeting.
same time.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
all
you
for
all.
being here too so late. We're sorry.
And thank you for all that you went through this week.
Yeah, it's not an easy week.
Thank you all very much. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Steve, thank you
Thanks,
very
guys.
much. All right, moving on. We need to go on to the line item transfers.